sensing this danger. This is the greatest showman! He is floating on air now! He's going to sit it back.
It's a multicultural AFL footy show with Vanessa Harbir and George Gracios.
Hello and welcome to another week of the NEMBC's Multicultural AFL Footy Show. I am Vanessa and on tonight's panel we have Harbir and George. Hello guys.
Hello Vanessa.
Hi Vanessa, hi Harbir.
The current COVID restrictions and lockdowns around Australia, except for Victoria, may force the AFL to create a new hub based in Victoria for the next few weeks, so we'll keep you up to date with this story as it unfolds. After last week's results, the bottom half of the top 8 positions are all up for grabs with 7 rounds to go. Last Thursday, Brisbane at home defeated Geelong by 44 points, while St Kilda created the shock of the round by defeating Richmond by 40 points, keeping the Tigers to 2 goals for the match, recording their lowest score in 60 years. At the MCG, Fremantle kept in front of Collingwood all day and won by 12 points, and North Melbourne in Hobart won against the Gold Coast by 9 points, as Port Adelaide at home struggled to beat Sydney by 10 points. What are your thoughts, Harbir and George, on this round of surprises?
Well, before any other surprise, I think the biggest surprise for us was that we've got a 3-year extension for Channel 31, which is a great news for all the people.
Yeah, fantastic news.
Yeah, and congratulations and everyone who has worked behind the scenes and in the front as well. That they've done a fantastic job in proving our point, and we got this extension. It's a beautiful news. And coming back to footy, Geelong got a what I can say,
real
like
shock.
Real shock, and then the real fact check as well with the team as well. So I think it's more than the Geelong factor. I think Brisbane Lions are flying high at the moment. They have people which have so much hunger up in performing well, and with Chris Fagan, we talk about that every game or so, every week or so, that he's been very instrumental in that. I think the way he's pushing the players forward is what making the Brisbane do such a good performance. Although it will be a good test for them as well to play at other venues, but at the moment, if they're at Gabba and they're playing like that, there is no one who can defeat them.
Yeah, well, the coach there, Chris Fagan, is both a mentor, a teacher, a coach, a motivator. He's really getting the best out of the players. But Geelong were so pedestrian and so flat in their performance. They'd won 11 of the previous clashes against the Brisbane Lions, so they really had the wood over them. Well done to Brisbane Lions for ending that hoodoo. Uncharacteristically for Geelong, they were making a lot of mistakes with their ball use. Tom Stewart was undisciplined on a number of occasions. Of course, he got into that fight, that scuffle with Charlie Cameron, which resulted in a free kick being paid away, and he got dragged to the bench. So Geelong uncharacteristically showed some acts of indiscipline which affected their performance, and Brisbane put the pressure on, and Geelong wilted.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And talking about wilting, how terrible were Richmond against St Kilda? They were consigned to a paltry scoreline of 2 goals, 10-22, which, as you said at the top of the show, Vanessa, their lowest score since 1961.
60 years, right?
So an amazing performance by the Saints. They've answered their critics. They needed to come back and put in a solid performance against a very well-credentialed team. And perversely, they're still in the hunt for a place in the 8, St Kilda.
Yeah, definitely. After all those dismal shows by St Kilda, they needed that kind of a boost. And to do that against Richmond is probably going to do them a world of good with their performance, and they should have their tails up. But we've seen with St Kilda this year, there has been a biggest factor with Marshall. I think when Marshall is playing and Ryder is there, that's when the team performs well. I think it's although it's not fair to say that just 2 players carry the whole team, but I think, unfortunately, if you look at the results, that's what's been going on. So let's see what happens in the coming matches if they can stay up where they are at the moment.
Yeah, certainly Richmond missed the presence of Toby Nankervis and Rowan Marshall. He was terrific. He gave the Saints some strength and aggression around the ball, and he got his midfielders into the play, and the Richmond defence were swamped.
Yeah, and Collingwood Fremantle, I think Fremantle, we know that they're on the rise and they're playing good. They've got this some mojo going on, but Collingwood should have won that, especially after that huge win against Melbourne. And I don't know why they've lost, and I think there needs to be a lot of introspection still, which needs to be done with Collingwood. I think they really need to get to their grassroots and then work on that, because Collingwood is in a bit of a strife at the moment.
Yeah, look, I was interested to see how Robert Harvey would acquit himself in his first match as coach, and to see what sort of positional moves he would make. He seemed to get things correct early on in the game. Collingwood came out of the blocks really quickly. They were impressive. They moved the ball quickly. Cox was given another opportunity to prove himself. Ended up having a very disappointing day. So does that call his position into the team in question? For the Dockers, Rory Lobb was terrific all day, and he gave them some drive around the ruck contest, got the midfielders into the play as well. Andrew Brayshaw has been a fantastic player for the Dockers, and again, he was one of the best players on the ground, and they needed someone to step up in the absence, of course, of...
And Mundy's form been fantastic too, yeah.
So Mundy, another great player on the day. So they've been showing some positive signs in recent weeks, the Dockers, and they'll be pleased that they finally notched up a win away from home. So great effort there. And talking about great efforts, North Melbourne finally getting the job done at the expense this time of the Gold Coast Suns. We've been criticising the Gold Coast Suns in recent weeks because of their poor efforts and their lacklustre performances, but take nothing away from North Melbourne. It was a bit of a struggle in the end. They got their noses in front, but it's 4 points, confidence developing, and David Noble can see improvement in the team, which is the main thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what we've been saying with North Melbourne. They seem to be on the right track. So when the team is building, then you know where they are heading. So that's what proved here as well. And Gold Coast, I think they are in more sort of problems than one. So they've got few problems that needs to be tackled, and they're not there in the games where they can perform well. Now this was like at par sort of game, and where they should have won. The way their players are and the way they've played in the previous games and this year I'm talking about. But I think it's towards the second half of the season we see Gold Coast sort of go in the bad form or so, I think, and that's what we saw it again.
Well, Stuart Juhabir wanted to see more effort, and to be fair to the Gold Coast Suns, they did show more effort, more pressure. Their tackle count was a lot higher than in recent weeks, so that was one area that they've certainly improved on, but it's their all-round play that let them down. And to be fair as well, North Melbourne, if they were a lot more accurate, it wouldn't have been such a close contest. They would have had the game sewn up by three-quarter time.
Yeah, and the Port Adelaide Sydney, I think that was always on the cards unless Port Adelaide performs better side. But Travis Boak, he had a great outing that day, and they gave Sydney a lesson like they're not there yet. So Sydney really needs to come out, and with all the young players, and we are probably getting those fatigue signs in the Sydney now. So they really need to come up with something.
Well, I rated that as one of the games of the year. It was goal for goal virtually the whole game. You didn't know which way the game was going to turn. There were some fantastic acts of courage and bravery by both sides. The young players for the Sydney Swans, as you touched on, Harbir, sure, they're starting to show some signs of fatigue, but they hung in there all night, and Port Adelaide really had to work hard for the win and take nothing away from the Swans. Hopefully they can use that performance as a springboard for the rest of the season. Port Adelaide still in with a great chance of getting a top 4 spot. So for them, that was the important thing, getting the points and keeping themselves in contention for a top 4 spot.
Yep, definitely.
Thank you, guys. We'll be back with more reviews from the weekend that was, after these messages. Welcome back. Continuing with our match reviews, starting with Melbourne's crack of a win by 11 points against a determined Essendon, and Hawthorn surprised most by defeating the GW Giants by 3 goals. Over in Perth, in an empty arena, the West Coast Eagles were smashed by 55 points and the Western Bulldogs ran away with the game. And Carlton turned on a huge second quarter and held on to beat the Adelaide Crows. George, what do you make of those 3 matches?
Well, starting off with the Melbourne-Essendon match, Essendon really served it up to the Demons. The Demons were held together by a fantastic defensive showing by Jake Lever and Stephen May. They kept their team in the game. Essendon would be ruining some missed opportunities and perhaps a few poor umpiring decisions.
Yeah, and I can't believe how can they keep on doing it week in, week out, Jack Lever and Stephen May at the back. I think the more, they're so pivotal in their wins that everything that comes back, they have the confidence that they can tackle it. And they know each other's position, and it's a fantastic way, the way things are going at the moment for the Melbourne. And they're coming up against any challenge, whichever is thrown to them. And GWS Giants, I don't know what could inspire you more, a position in the top 8, that they couldn't get the win over there. And they know that Hawks, they're not flying this year. So that was their perfect opportunity. Or maybe they felt complacent. And then we talk about Alistair Clarkson's factor all the time. I think he can make any 22 look good. So, and what a fantastic mark there by Tom O'Brien.
Finally, he's held on to a grab. Hawthorn supporters keep referring to him as the nearly man. Nearly took a grab, nearly kicked a goal, nearly laid a tackle. He finally held on to a mark, and it's a contender for Mark of the Year. But GWS, how disappointing. As you said, Harbir, they blew a golden opportunity to displace Richmond in the top 8, but take nothing away from the Hawks. They were fantastic all day. They were committed, they were spirited, and they were very well worth the 4 points. They deserved the win.
Yeah, definitely. And West Coast Bulldogs, I mean,
Wow.
just look at the scoreline. It tells you all that how much dominant they were. But then again, the issue of scoring against the goals, we understand that the weather played factor at the start too. But they should have done better as far as goal kicking is concerned. But nevertheless, a full-strength West Coast team in West Coast, that's a big statement by Bulldogs. I don't know how they lost to Geelong like that, but this game, they've proven that they are the real contenders this year.
It was a fantastic performance, and they missed so many scoring opportunities. If you look at their scoreline, they kicked, I think it was 13 goals and 20 behinds.
Yeah.
If you reverse that margin, 20 goals and 13 points, they would have won the game by close to 100 points.
Yeah.
They were superb. And Aaron Norton, again, a contender for Mark of the Year. Bontempelli, what a superstar, kicking 3 goals.
And goal of the year.
And the goal of Bontempelli, from the side. It
Defied the law of physics, that goal.
Amazing.
He shouldn't have kicked that goal, but he found a way to thread it through, and Bulldogs would be relieved to get back on in the winner's circle. That disappointing, heartbreaking loss to Geelong a couple of weeks ago. So they're in there again with a strong chance of top spot, and I'm really happy for them. They're a great team. And Carlton, the Blues, finally get to sing the theme song after the match, relief for Teague. All sorts of rumours about his job being in jeopardy. The Blues did give their supporters a little bit of a heart attack, only winning by 10 points. It should have been by a bigger margin. They're just not ruthless enough yet, Harbir.
Yeah, and lucky for them, you know how you said that. I think lucky they were able to sustain it for the 4 quarters, and I think Eddie Betts took it personally, the way he was performing in that game. And finally, Patrick Cripps coming into some sort of form too. So some good signs for Carlton in this game.
Thank you, guys. Leaving last round behind, starting tonight, the Gold Coast takes on Richmond. Geelong and Essendon play at Gardenia Park, while Melbourne hosts the GWS Giants on Saturday. A couple of big games there, boys.
Yeah, definitely. Gold Coast Richmond, this could turn out to be a good game. The way Richmond are performing at the moment against St Kilda, I think they're going to come back with a vengeance. I don't think Gold Coast will be able to withhold that. I think it's going to be so much force against Gold Coast that they won't be able to stand that. And I think Astray is coming back as well. I think they might welcome back Tom Lynch, who would love to play against his old side now. And I think Richmond's going to come out on the top. We can't just rule them out yet, although they got a thrashing from St Kilda, which is so unlike them. But I think they will bounce back.
You would hope so. Richmond just holding on to the 8th spot. Their position in the 8 is hanging by a thread. They do need to bounce back. I would expect them to, but injuries are starting to take their toll. Hopefully Gold Coast can put up a better performance than what they've been showing in recent weeks. Yep. Geelong versus Essendon, that's going to be a crackerjack game, Harbir. The Cats, after that disappointing performance, uncharacteristically, their three-pronged attack just failed to fire a bullet. So they'll be hoping to have a more productive output. Essendon have been very competitive. They're building. They've got a great young team. But I still expect Geelong, just their experience and their nous, their big game experience will get them over the line.
Yeah, no, definitely I agree. I think that's probably the only factor. Although Essendon has the exuberance of youth, but I believe because cool, calm and collected Geelong will probably overcome that Essendon, but it's going to be a cracker of a game. And Melbourne was a GWS Giants. Look, there's another inspiring thing for GWS Giants to make a big statement by beating the top team at the moment. On the other hand, where Melbourne is, like, they can afford to do anything. They can do the resting of their players. They do whatever they want because they're 2 games clear. So they can do some experiment. But GWS Giants, they really should take this opportunity to prove. But I think Melbourne, I can't go against them at this stage.
Yeah, I agree, Harbir. The GWS Giants, terribly disappointing in their efforts against the Hawks. They're going to have to really crank up their effort for 4 quarters against Melbourne. Melbourne have proven time and time again that they can take on sides, and whether they're playing on dry surfaces, in the wind, they're a team for all conditions. Yeah. And Melbourne, again, should prove to be too strong.
Thank you for those comments. We are off to a break. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more on the other side. We have 6 previews to cover in this segment. Saturday, Adelaide play Brisbane, Fremantle clash with Carlton, and Hawthorn take on Port Adelaide, with Sydney and West Coast going head-to-head. Collingwood take on St Kilda, and the Western Bulldogs encounter North Melbourne. A few interesting clashes in there, Harbir. What do you think?
Well, definitely there are some interesting ones. Starting with Adelaide and Brisbane, I think Brisbane are a bit too strong at the moment for I would say any team at this stage, the way they are performing, although it's going to come to probably the venue factor, and then when they come up with the teams where they can, where the other teams can match up their stature aside, but Brisbane would be too strong for Adelaide. And Adelaide, I think they will still put up some show against them, because that's another team which has been performing well against few teams, and we might see that in this one. But the way in the last game, their forward line wasn't really performing that well, which we have seen in the past. I think they probably should bounce back a little bit, although I would say with Brisbane's defence, it's going to be again hard.
Yeah, Brisbane's defence has been terrific all year, and in their clash last week against Geelong, they were supreme. Harris Andrews, Marcus Adams, who's been very underrated, was a standout performer. Even Brandon Starcevich has emerged as a good defender. So Brisbane are going to be way too strong in that particular match. Fremantle versus Carlton. Well, Carlton got the chocolates last game against Adelaide. Fremantle a good win also against Collingwood. So this will be a very interesting clash. I would expect Fremantle just to pip the Blues.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But that's going to be 2 teams which are at par at the moment, and they're both striving to do some good performance. And we've seen good performance from both the teams. So on that day, who performs well, it's anybody's guess. But Fremantle is the way to go for me as well. And with the other clash, Hawthorn versus Port Adelaide, look, Hawthorn can surprise any team. So and then that's where it is. Let's not just go too much into that. Although, just for the tipping purposes, I would still say Port Adelaide should overcome their challenge. But Hawks is such a team with the Lester Clarkson on board. We keep on mentioning that coach's name, but that's a different factor. So it's going to be, for me, for the winning purposes, I think Port Adelaide should win this.
Yeah, I was really pleased, obviously, as a Hawthorn supporter, that we upset the Giants. And it was great to see young kids like Dylan Moore have a breakout performance, kick some great goals. We spoke about Tim O'Brien finally taking some marks. So if Hawthorn can put their game together for 4 quarters, they're going to give Port Adelaide a fright. But you would expect Port Adelaide, just a little bit more experienced and hardened, should get the points. Sydney versus West Coast, this is a huge clash. Sydney coming off a narrow loss, West Coast coming off an absolute thumping, even though they had some key players return like Luke Shuey and Jeremy McGovern. They didn't fire a shot. They really need to lift this week.
Yeah, definitely. And Sydney can see the opportunity as well. And Buddy should say, and the way he's performing, he should get to his 1,000 goals. That'll be fantastic for everyone. But I think Sydney has that opportunity at this time because they've seen what Bulldogs have done to that team, which is in its full power and full vigour. So they should take some lesson out of that, and then they can win on the day, definitely. But I think West Coast might come back for me. I think they're going to come out winners in this one. And Collingwood versus St Kilda, well, St Kilda, the way they performed against Richmond, you would say that they should win this one too, and there should be a big margin. But St Kilda has been up and down, and Collingwood, I don't know, there should be something which inspire them. I don't know what it is. They need some inspiration from somewhere. Whether they will get in this game or not, I don't know. So it's St Kilda for me. I think the way they're performing, they should win this one.
Yeah, look, I like Collingwood's combination of Mason Cox and Grundy. Now, if that combination can click, they're going to give St Kilda a very, very tough game. St Kilda with Rowan Marshall, as we said earlier in the show, really makes St Kilda stand tall, brings the midfielders into the game. St Kilda, as we said earlier, were magnificent against Richmond. Can they go back-to-back and sustain that kind of consistency and emotion and vigour? I hope so. They're a very distant chance of making the 8. Must win this clash to keep those hopes alive. Western Bulldogs in the other clash taking on North Melbourne. Well, their form is just absolutely amazing. I expect a huge win to the Bulldogs. That win in Perth will inspire them onto bigger and better things, I think. North Melbourne Kangaroos, finally, they're clicking. We can see the improvement in their game, but we know Western Bulldogs will be way, way too tough, way too strong.
Yeah. Now, in the last game as well, at the start, North Melbourne were putting up some fight for at least for the first quarter or so. I think they haven't been able to sustain that for the 4 quarters. With the win under their belt, I think that will give them some sort of enthusiasm, and they will be looking at different avenues where they don't get a thrashing again from the Bulldogs, how they got last time. So I'm expecting a bit of a close contest, and then some fierce contest as well. Ben Cunnington, he's coming out in his good form, and he can inspire others.
Josh Simpkin as well.
Yeah,
Harbir,
yeah. So they're all sort of finding their form a little bit, so which could be potential for them performing very well against Bulldogs. And you always have that extra hunger to perform against a good team going into the contest. So I think they might put up a good show, but Bulldogs, I think they will be too strong.
Thank you, guys. Well, now to my tip selections, and this week I'm going for Richmond, Geelong, Melbourne, Brisbane, Fremantle, Hawthorn, Sydney, St Kilda and Western Bulldogs. With COVID restrictions and lockdowns, it is advisable to check with your local media for times and venues to confirm when and where your team is playing. That is all we have time for this week. You can also watch us in Adelaide on Channel 44 Friday evenings, on Aurora Foxtel TV at midnight Saturday, and on the NEMBC YouTube. You are listening to this podcast on the Community Radio Network, and the AFL Diversity Language News can be heard on national multicultural radio stations. I am Vanessa Gatica.
I'm Harbir Singh.
And I'm George Gracios.
And thank you for watching. See you next week.